Tigger and Eeyore. It is difficult to imagine two characters so different as Tigger and Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Tigger is, well, Tigger. He's enthusiastically exuberant and bouncy. For bouncing is what Tiggers do best, after all. And then there's Eeyore. Eeyore is Eeyore. He is a gloomy Gus and a negative Ned wrapped up in a wet blanket of permanent pessimism. That is Eeyore. Every single syllable that he utters is just dragged out in dread of every moment. And Eeyore knows that everything is bad and it's going to get worse. That's just the way life is to Eeyore. Of the two, Tigger and Eeyore, Christians should strive to their best to be more like Tigger instead of Eeyore. Yet too often we come across as Eeyore. I'm a Christian, I have to go to church, you want to come with me? And then we wonder why. They don't say, yes, can I have 2 helpings of that? No. That just drives them away. Or if we actually do get them to come, and then they become depressing Eeyore like us, and then we wonder, wow, they're not much fun to be around. There's no excitement or enthusiasm there. Well, this morning, as we begin working our way through 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, and we'll have 4 lessons from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, and then we'll be done with the book. And then in December, we'll go into a few other little studies, and then we'll pick up with 2 Thessalonians chapter, beginning in January. But right now, we're going to be winding down here in our study of 1 Thessalonians with a subject of a study called Sons of Light. Sons of light, because Paul lays out a sharp distinction here, just like this difference between Tigger and Eeyore, between sons of light, those who are of the light of the day, and sons of dark, those who are of the darkness and of the night. The believer is a son of light, a child of the light, as opposed to a child of dark. And the contrast between those two is just as sharp as the difference between Tigger and Eeyore. And so that's why I use that as our introduction this morning. Each of these lessons as we work through there will show the distinctive characteristics of those who follow Christ, in sharp contrast to those who live in the darkness, who are sons of darkness. And the believer's life is going to be very different, should be very different from the unbeliever who lives in the darkness of life, blind to reality, and not aware of or remotely prepared for the coming of Christ. Because that's what he talks about here at the beginning of chapter 5 here as we start our study this morning. So what we want to look at is sons of light live. And this first lesson will be sons of light live. And each other one will have a different sort of title to it. But we're going to see how we live. We live expectantly. We expect something, we're looking forward to and anticipating something coming. We live soberly, and then we live encouragingly. Those are the 3 things we're going to pull out of these first 11 verses this morning. Let's begin by looking at living expectantly. What does that mean? Well, we don't want to read the entire section, but let's read verses 1 through 3 here, and just to kind of get an idea of why we use the word expectantly. Now, as to the times and epochs, brethren, you have no need of anything to be written to you. For you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night, while they are saying peace and safety. Then destruction will come upon them suddenly, like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape. Let's go down to verse 5. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day would overtake you like a thief. For you are all sons of light and sons of day. You are not of night nor of darkness. If you recall, a few weeks ago we talked about in chapter 4 the idea of a transcendent walk raised to glory, where we talked about there was concern and worry about Christians who had died. And they were anticipating, expecting the coming of Christ at any moment. Paul had told them Christ was going to return, and so they were anticipating it, and they were looking forward to it, and thinking that it was going to be any moment. And now, all of a sudden, here, just within a short time of them becoming Christians, some had died in Christ. They had died and had been buried, and they were afraid that those brethren would not participate in or share in that resurrection or that return. And they didn't fully understand it, and so they were worried about that. But the point is, they were expecting Christ to return again. Let me just ask you this. How many of us live every day anticipating Christ coming back today? Or are we looking today at, well, if this guy ever shuts up, I can get out and go get some lunch. And thinking about what lunch is going to be. Or maybe you got some chores at the house you've got to go do, or whatever it might be. Something other than the fact that Christ could come before we get out of this building. Christ could come before I get to the lunch. Christ could come before I get home and do whatever chores I got to do today. Oh, and this would be awful, awful, awful. Christ could come before I see who the Cowboys are playing today. Now, did you notice what I said there? It used to be that I would feel that way. If the Cowboys are playing today, I'm going to be watching that game because I got to know if they're going to win, which they haven't done a whole lot of lately. Well, they did a little bit better. But anyway, now I don't even know who they're playing today. So if I don't find out, because I'm not going to watch the game. But it used to be that was all I cared about. But to illustrate how our lives can get so wrapped up in what's going to be happening next, we forget about the most important thing, what's going to be happening when Christ comes. Am I going to be ready for him to come? Am I going to be prepared? I was talking to Brother Hayes about that, being prepared just a minute ago. Am I prepared for it? Or am I just going through life, maybe kind of like Eeyore, hoping and worried that it's actually going to happen, and I don't want it to happen? Live expectantly. Now, he reminded them that it would come suddenly, without notice or advance warning. And he uses two illustrations here of the thief in the night and the woman who is pregnant. Now, we have one here that is, and others that have recently had children, and mothers that have had kids. And you know that when you were pregnant and it was becoming that, those last couple of weeks, did you have a date that you said, okay, the contraction is going to start here and the baby's going to be born here? No, not unless you set like a schedule, a cesarean section. My daughter-in-law has had three of them, and she's having a fourth one later this year, sometime in December, and they changed the date twice as they measure the child. So I don't know when that baby's going to be born, even though we know it will be by cesarean. But in a normal, regular childbirth, the child is born, the labor pains start when they're not prepared. That's why parents prepare, or parents-to-be prepare in advance. They get a bag ready, they get some things ready, and they make plans. All right, when they have other children, all right, when it starts, we're going to call grandma, wake her up. We don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, we're calling grandma to wake her, get the little one, or meet us at the hospital, or whatever it may be. You prepare in advance because you don't know when it's going to happen. You just can't plan those things. And the second thing is that it is so they live they live in a way that is not caught by surprise, so that when it happens, you're ready for it. Same thing with the thief in the night. We don't know when a thief is going to come, and we don't know if the thief will ever come, but regardless, we prepare in advance. Put locks on the doors. We close and lock the windows. Maybe you have a ring on your front door. That's the ring camera that tells you who's at your front door that you can track with your phone wherever you may be. The opportunities to be prepared for thieves coming are beyond belief for those of us who grew up in the day when you didn't even have computers, or much less that kind of technology. But the idea is what people do is they prepare in advance. They get ready. Because we don't know. They don't send us a notice. Say, by the way, I'm going to be at your house at 2 o'clock on Tuesday morning, so can you be sure to be sound asleep, please, while I break into your house. They just don't do that. In the same way, the sons of light should be preparing for the inevitable before it happens. Because there are two things that can happen to us. One, we could die before he comes again, or the other option is he comes before we die. One or the other is going to bring us face to face with the Lord, and so we prepare in advance. We prepare before it happens. And we live as if it could be any moment. Do we live like that? That's how Son of Light lives. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that we say, well, the Lord's going to come any moment. I'm going to quit my job and go sit out in the front yard in a lawn chair or go sit up on the roof waiting so that I can be closer to the Lord when he comes. No, we don't do that. People have done that. Dennis talks a bit about that a little bit in this article this morning. I recommend that. It's a great article, and there will be a conclusion next week. But it's the idea of people who would go out and just stop everything. In fact, it happens not only in our lifetime, or has happened in our lifetime, it was happening in the lifetime of Paul, because apparently some of the Thessalonians had begun to believe that, and Paul has to rebuke them in the 2nd Thessalonians and tell them to get back to work. Don't sit around and wait for people to take care of you while you're waiting for the Lord to come, but you're still prepared. You're still ready. You don't know when it's coming, so you're going to be watching and awake for when it happens. And then let's go to verses 6 and 7, where he talks about drunkenness. This is the idea that comes up repeatedly now in the next few verses. Verse 6, he says, "So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert." And that word alert just means, it literally means awake. Or actually, it's not asleep in Greek. And sober, which is not drunk. You're not intoxicated. Verse 7, "For those who sleep do their sleeping at night, and those who get drunk at night." And so what he's talking about here is that these are kind of people that have undisciplined lives and undisciplined minds. They're unprepared. The idea here is that the sons of night live for the night activities, to be drunk and sleep. Their spirits are dull and slow to see and respond. We, on the other hand, as Christians, are to be awake and watchful and prompt to respond to danger or an emergency, quick to perceive and act. Yesterday there was a small event where some sparks escaped from their container and a box caught on fire at somebody's house. I won't say about Wendy's. And because it was a little bit windy. And several people spotted that. They were watchful and alert. They said, "Hey, that's not supposed to be on fire there," and it was taken care of. The idea here, of course, for us is that it's spiritual, that our alertness is a spiritual alertness. We are aware that the world is looking out to destroy us. Satan is wanting to destroy us, and we are prepared. Sons of day or sons of the light are alert and sober. Peter, some 30 years, about the same time as Paul, or a little bit later than Paul, wrote something very similar. Turn over to 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13. Peter says almost the same thing in warning the churches of Galatia that he had written to. In chapter 1, verse 13, he says this, "Therefore, prepare your minds for action." Have your mind ready to act. Keep sober in spirit. Fix your hope completely on the grace to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. And so sons of day are prepared to act. Prepared to live and live in a way that responds to the world's attacks, responds to the things that it tries to use to confuse us, to delay us, to distract us and draw us away from Christ. We fight that. We are ready to not give in to that, to not surrender to that. That's the alertness that is to be of the expectant Christian. We prepare for his coming. And the way we do it is by the light of his word. His word. We fill our mind with his word. That's what we need. That's why we are always offering services Sunday morning, Sunday night, and the Wednesday night studies, and the gospel meeting that we had. And we encourage people to open their Bibles and study on a daily basis, because the light that will guide your mind, that will prepare you to action, is found in the revelation of Jesus Christ, where we are told about him. Our 1 John talks a lot about Christ as a light and how he is the light of the world. And this helps us to prepare for him. And this requires us, and I'm going to kind of backtrack a little bit from what I said earlier, to combine a little bit of Eeyore with Tigger. Because Tigger can get a little out of control and be like some of these little ones, just be bouncing off the walls and out of control. And there needs to be some recognition of reality and some understanding of life itself and the things that are bringing at us. So we bring the bouncy under control. We don't squash it. We don't throw a wet blanket on it and put it out. But we rein it in just a little bit. Because we need steady, focused attention on the things of Christ instead of the things of this world. We need to be believers who come to worship for training and how to be sons of light. How to keep our focus sharp and ready, because the world will come after us. And it's coming after us right now if you don't think it is. Well, the next thing I want us to look at is live soberly. Live soberly. That's just a word of not drunk and to not be intoxicated. And notice what he says in chapter 5, verse 8. But since we are of the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet the hope of salvation. So he's telling us to put on this armor so that we are ready to fight. In fact, I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if you can see in the background, I've widened it out so that the letters are sharp, but we got a picture of some soldiers on guard duty. Guard duty. And they are alert and watchful. And so Paul's using this military illustration to show the fact that people who are in the Lord's army and are fighting on his behalf, they have their armor on and they're prepared for battle, prepared to be on watch. And I've got to get something off my chest. I hate cop and doctor TV shows where the minute they're off work, they hit the bar and start drinking, because you know that inevitably after about number 3 or 4 beer or drink, they're going to be called back on duty because of an emergency. And they act like they're sober. It's absurd. Unless the storyline of the show is that they're in trouble because they have alcohol problems. But most of the time they knocked a few back and then they go save somebody's life and act like they hadn't had anything to drink. It doesn't work that way. Now, it's the same for a soldier of Christ in this respect. Why would a Christian let himself get impaired by alcohol? Because we're on duty 24/7, 365. We're in the Lord's army all the time. So as people of the day, we should stay sober. We should be wearing our breastplate of faith and love and our helmet of salvation or hope, so that we are ready to do battle when the attacks come. Because if we're sitting there and we've knocked a few back and social drinking with some friends because we think it's okay, and then all of a sudden they're going to be looking at us, and I can tell you right now, if you think that that'll work, that that'll make you more cool or some way more appealing to the people of the world, no, it doesn't work that way. What it tells them is that you're not serious, that you're really a son of the dark, not a son of the light. And so then they really don't care what you have to say or what you really claim to believe, because now they know better. Got that off my chest today, by the way. People of the day stay sober. Faith, hope, and love are all focused on honoring God and protecting us from Satan's assault. And so to do that, we have to be sober. And so what we do is that we are on guard duty all the time. And it's interesting, later on Paul says, put on the soldier's armor, and he describes it in much greater detail and about 10 years later in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 13 through 17. Keep your marker there, Thessalonians. Turn back a few pages. And I'm not going to read the entire description here, but I do want us to point out and notice something here about this battle. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10, he says this: finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. And notice what he says: put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. Satan is trying to trap you. He's trying to trick you. And one of those is telling you that it's okay to knock a few back. Because our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Our fight's not against people. Our fight is against the lies that are being told them and that they're spreading on behalf of Satan to us. So it's against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the full armor of God so that you will be able to resist in the evil day, and having done everything, to stand firm. And then he goes from beginning of verse 14, listing the various parts of the armor, expanding on what he talked about here in Thessalonians. So we are prepared. Now, of course, the key here is he's not really talking about alcohol and being drunk with alcohol. I mean, that's the illustration of a greater spiritual reality. A greater spiritual reality is that the way of thinking that guides our life is alertness and wakefulness and soberness. It is a mindset that is spiritually vigilant, sharply focused on God's things instead of being distracted by worldly things. It is knowing that we should love the world or not love the world because it brings death rather than life. 1 John 2:15 through 17 talks about that. It's being watchful for Satan, aware that he is going to be seeking to attack us. Keep your marker there in Thessalonians and turn to the right in your Bible to 1 Peter again. We're going to go back to chapter 5 this time. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. Chapter 5, verse 8, probably one of those passages many of you could quote just off the top of your head. I want us to read it and see it in the full detail here. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. Verse 8 says, "Be of sober spirit. Be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour." And that's the part that we can probably quote, just remembering. Satan prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. But we don't remember that first part most of the time. Be of sober spirit, be on alert. Verse 9 says, "But resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same experiences of suffering are being accomplished by your brethren who are in the world." And so we are at war against Satan. He is seeking to destroy us. That's why we have to be alert, awake, sober, ready to fight, ready to see when he's coming, see the attacks before they come. Be on guard. Because serving in the Lord's army is a 24/7, 365 job. It's not something we do on Sunday morning. It's something we do on Monday night when Satan tries to get us to do something we shouldn't do and not do something we shouldn't or should do. Satan tries to get us attracted to the things of this world. That's what it means to live soberly. Well, let's go to the next one. Live encouragingly. And this is where we need to get our full Tigger on. Okay, the full Tigger. Because we need to encourage people. We need to be excitedly exuberant about our service to God and about the fact that we have the greatest thing that anybody could have ever offered us. Anything, the greatest thing that could have ever been provided for us. Salvation in Jesus Christ. Folks, it doesn't get any better than that. I don't care if you get whatever it is that you love, that you just absolutely could not live without. Nobody could just, excuse me, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. Those aren't important. Serving Christ is important. So whatever it is that just you cannot get enough of, I don't care how good it may be, it's still not as good as salvation from our sins and fellowship with God and an opportunity to be with Him forever when He does come, or whether we die first or whether He comes before we die. It just doesn't get any better than that. So bring the bounce of joy to life. Let's read verses. I go back to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Let's read verses 9 through 11. "For God has not destined us for wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ." So we got two options, two ways we could go. One is son of darkness and wrath. The other is son of light and salvation. Now, which of those appeals to you? I would hope you say salvation. But if it appeals to you, then act like it. Act like this is where you want to be. Act like serving God is what means everything to you. And take that spirit and that attitude and that heart with you everywhere you go. We're talking about Bible class this morning about our outreach and reaching out to people as watchmen and warning people. One of the ways we can do that is to show them that we are excited about being Christians. Why can't we not, or how can we not be excited about that? Bring on the full Tigger when it comes to letting people know that you love the Lord. Be excited about it. Because I tell you this, if our real outlook on life is a joyless fear that the Lord's going to come while we're still alive, and I've got to go to church, and I've got to worship God, and if that's our approach, that's how we approach our service to God, with zero enthusiasm, as if it is the chore we do not want to do, it will be obvious to everyone. Now, you may lie to yourself if that's you, but everybody else sees it. Everybody else knows it. As one writer put it this way, the best argument for Christianity is Christians. Their joy, their certainty, their completeness. But the strongest argument against Christianity is also Christians. When they are somber and joyous. When they are self-righteous and smug and complacent consecration. I go to church, that's all I need to do, I'm good. When they are narrow and repressive, you better do it my way or else. Then Christianity dies 1,000 deaths. Joy, certainty, completeness. That's how we grow a church. And that's how we grow, because we're growing ourselves. So are we growing this church and our own souls by living in the light? Looking forward to his return with anticipation, not anxiety. We get those words mixed up. Anticipation is you want it. Remember the old ketchup commercial, anticipation? You wait for the ketchup to come out. We're looking forward to it. We want that. Anxiety is we don't want it because it's not something we don't think it's going to be good. Anticipation. And if we're looking forward to his return with that anticipation and joy, it'll show too. People will know it. People will ask, man, work just blew up today. And you had a smile on your face. How do you do that? How do you not grumble and complain about work all the time like everybody else? How do you do that? Because you have a master that's greater than your boss at work. You have a hope that's greater than anything this world has to offer. And you let it, and it shows, and it gives you an opportunity to tell people about Christ. And be willing to tell them. That's because I believe in Jesus. And I know that Christ could come at any moment now, and I'm living ready for it. Are you? Can I help you do that? Do that. Ask them that. And this joy will show not just in our attendance, but in the way we connect with each other regularly outside the doors and walls of this building. Connecting to one another. Building connections to one another. Because, folks, we're in this together. And the rest of the world is not in this with us. And so we need to be connecting to one another, building and growing together and learning to be exuberant for each other and with each other. Even when things get hard. Because we know Eeyore's right, some things go bad. So, caring for the lost world begins by caring for our church family. Do we care enough to be excited about seeing them and excited about finding time to spend with them beyond these walls? Sons of light. They live expectantly, they live soberly, and they live encouragingly. Go ahead and get your phone books out. We're going to sing number 280 in just a moment. Brother Steve's going to lead us in that, in 280. And we're just going to end with this one question. Are you a son of light? And if not, will you join us in living like a son of light? Because that's what we want. I want to live like a son of light, and I want you to live like a son of light. And we should all be looking at ourselves in that mirror of our heart and soul and looking at the face of the person around, the people around us, saying, I want you to live like a son of light, because there's nothing better than going to heaven and being with God for eternity. If you miss heaven, you miss all there is, folks. But if you make it, you get the greatest thing that's possible for humanity. If we can help you be right with the Lord and be a son of light, we beg you, we plead with you, please come while we stand and while we sing.